Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain. My name is Sean Hershey. I am your host, and I'm a therapist. I specialize in helping people use emotional and psychological modalities to heal from chronic pain. And today, we're talking to another gay therapist in Brooklyn, just like me, another gay therapist in Brooklyn with a podcast, Dustin Oliver. You're gonna enjoy this conversation with Dustin. This is a good one. It's so fun to talk to other New Yorkers, and Dustin actually lives just like one neighborhood away from me. We are both off the Q train in Brooklyn. Um, New Yorkers are like so hilarious, and I am like so becoming one because okay. If you ask someone from St. Paul, Minnesota, where are you from? They say St. Paul, Minnesota. If you ask someone from New York where they're from, they'll say 74th between Broadway and West End, which I love. Like 32nd Street, right by this thing, like a certain landmark. And I'm like, that's amazing. So fun. Try it. Next time you talk to someone from New York, try it. Because it'll probably happen to you. You'll get a lot of information. That's how New Yorkers are. Anyway, in this episode, I'm bringing this up because in true New York style, I disclose the subway stop that I live off of in my conversation with Dustin, and I didn't even edit it out because, like, come and get me. Come and get me. You want to be the therapist self-disclosure police? Come and get me. It is New York City. There are thousands and thousands of apartments and houses and businesses and people off this stop. So come and get me. My old therapist, Susan, actually had sessions straight out of her home office on 14th Street. I used to go to her house, which was so cute. And her living room was basically the waiting area, and it was awesome. Once I even got to go into Susan's kitchen to put some of my lunch leftovers in her fridge. So this today is not quite me inviting you into my kitchen, but it is me telling you what subway stop I live off of. So if you've been wanting to know, this is the episode for you. All right. We welcome Dustin Oliver to the podcast, another gay therapist in Brooklyn. If you like me, you're probably going to like Dustin too. Similar vibes. I would say very similar vibes. And like I said, he has a podcast. So I want to encourage you to check out Dustin Oliver's podcast. It's called Boy Meets Therapy. You can find that, Boy Meets Therapy, wherever you get your podcasts. And I actually reached out to him to do a little podcast swap, where he's a guest on mine and I'm a guest on his, which we are doing right now. I reached out to Dustin because his podcast is so fun and I'm a huge fan of Boy Meets Therapy. So you can join him over there on his platform too. You will have a good time. If you listened last week, I took some time to have a sit down talk with y'all about ratings and reviews. And I want to ask you a little check-in question. Did you get around to doing it? So we're going to take another moment to check in about that again, because this conversation is for real. If you're enjoying the show, Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain, and even if you're not enjoying the show that much, but you're enjoying it enough to be listening to it right now, please scroll down and give the show some stars. I would really appreciate that from you. Most of you listen on Apple Podcasts, so when you're on the show's main page, you just scroll down to where you see 5 stars. Now is the time. Right now is the time. I'd really appreciate a review from you. There's also a place right underneath to click write a review. You can certainly do that too. I would really appreciate that as well. More ratings boost the show up. And don't we all want Mind Body Medicine boosted up? Help more people find this. Help more people understand that this is legitimate. Help more people understand that if they choose to go down this healing path, they're not on their own, right? We're all here too. You can be part of that for someone else. On Spotify, at the top of the main podcast page, there's a button that says follow. There's a button that's a little bell. There's a settings gear, and then there are 3 dots. Click on the 3 dots, and you'll see an option to rate podcast. There you go. You can leave a star rating right there. I love a 5-star rating, but you know what I love even more is being honest, being real, and being true to yourself. If it would not be authentic for you to leave a 5-star review, leave 4 stars, leave 3, leave 2, leave 1 if you really hate it. I don't know why you'd listen if you hate it that much, but then again, okay. I personally listen to The Daily, the podcast from the New York Times. I listen to that pretty regularly, and I have proudly given The Daily a 1-star review. You can scroll back and find that. I've proudly given them a 1-star review because some of their content is really, honestly, I think, in my opinion, great. And other things they put out, in my humble opinion, so right-wing biased. And that show, back in 2020, that show was so like, my pronouns are she, they, and my pronouns are he, him. Back in 2020, when that was more cool. And now that our culture has taken a hard turn to the right, The Daily is now like, we platform all these Trumpist sympathizers, and we make legitimate perspectives that are totally Nazi-esque, and we don't talk about pronouns anymore. So 5 years ago, am I right? LOL. And I'm like, y'all are pathetic, weak, and pathetic. So that gets a 1-star review from Sean Hershey, because even though I still like some of their episodes, that is how I really feel. All right, my invitation to you. Take a minute to tell me and tell the world how you really feel about this show. If you're a regular listener, I would really appreciate full participation from regular listeners. It takes legit maybe 3 seconds. It's such an easy way to say thank you to me. If you would like to do that, it is such a great way to legitimize and lift up this conversation that we are having together here. So let's do that. Let's legitimize our conversations, the conversations we have on this platform. Let's legitimize this whole world, the realm of TMS healing and neuroplastic healing modalities. Let's legitimize using emotional and psychological modalities to heal from chronic pain and chronic symptoms, because it is legitimate. Let's do that together, and let's make sure the world knows they can join us here too. And this will help them too. Okay, and if you want to say, "Oh my god, this episode is so annoying. Sean's already taken like 10 minutes and he hasn't even gotten into the interview yet. 1 star. I wish I could give 0 stars." If you want to say that, if that is your heart's desire, then say that. Your heart can have that desire. It is just a few clicks away. And okay, now that you have taken a moment to leave a rating and or review, let's talk to Dustin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain podcast. I am here today with a fellow queer Brooklyn therapist, Dustin Oliver. Hi, Dustin.
Hi, that's me. Yes, we actually realized that we live very, very close to each other.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
But like I think you're like 1 subway stop away from me, right?
I'm off the Newkirk Plaza stop on the Q train.
So I'm on the Q as well. So I'm right near you. I'm near Prospect Park.
I'm like, now everybody who listens to the podcast knows exactly where I live.
Well, I thought about that, but it's also like, this is a very big city, so it's like,
I know. I'm like, the Newkirk Plaza stop is like, good luck finding me. Good luck locating exactly where I live, folks. If you want to try.
Yeah, near Prospect Park, right? Like, that's you.
Yeah. And I'm south of the park. I'm just a couple stops south of you.
Okay.
But okay.
Yeah, we live right near each other. We're neighbors.
We do. We are. And why don't we start by, I'll hand it over to you with why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and introduce
Oh
yourself?
my gosh, who am I? That is the question. Hi, my name is Dustin. I am a mental health counselor. So you're a social worker,
Yes.
therapist, and I'm a mental health counselor, therapist. We do basically,
Yeah.
the same thing. Um,
So
but yeah, so I am originally from Georgia. So if you heard a little twang in there, that's what happens. It always comes out at the most random moments. Um, like when I'm not really expecting it and I'm like exposed. Um, but yeah, so I did my undergrad at Georgia State University, which I actually am wearing a shirt for. You can't see it, but I didn't realize this, but I'm wearing a shirt for my Georgia State University shirt. And then I did my master's at the University of Kentucky. Um, in clinical mental health counseling. And I created a platform online. When I was in grad school, I started making these silly little videos about like different therapy topics. And so the platform is called Boy Meets Therapy. So I do that. And on basically it kind of morphed from like general um like therapy things to like my area, which is like gay, bisexual, queer men. Like that's kind of my domain. That's what I work with. That's my clinical interest.
well, and should we say, I mean, your TikTok like blew the fuck up, right? Like it's
It
big,
did
right?
okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm
Okay.
really critical. Like it did okay. Like I have some like TikToks and Instagram posts themselves that did really well.
Right.
Um yeah, yeah. Um, so it's gotten a little bit of attention, which is like
Mm.
really interesting. I actually had a guy. This is crazy, but I'm going to say this. I had a guy on Grinder message me and say, "Hey, I love your videos on Instagram." And then I like did not respond. I like didn't say anything because I'm like, "What do you say?" And then he like messaged me again, like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm so sorry. I just couldn't. I wanted to say thank you, but I also like didn't want to. It was such an interesting environment to like meet someone. But anyway, um,
That's how you know you're low key famous,
no,
right?
no, it did happen, and that was like really yeah, that was really interesting. But yeah, so I made these silly little videos, and now I kind of like talk about gay men, bisexual men, queer men. I'm just gonna say queer men because that's like easier. And that's kind of like what I do. Also, clinically, that's who I work with is gay and bisexual men. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's kind of like my area, my avenue. So anything related to
Excellent.
that group, I'm like particularly interested in. And yeah, I love that group of people. I think I love, and this might get me in trouble, but like I think I love gay more men more than like anything else. Like yeah, I just anyway, I just feel so connected to other gay men in so many ways.
I
Um
love that, and
yeah.
I let me say, you're not in trouble with me. I actually think it's really meaningful as therapists. I think most of us, people listening to this, might not know this, although there are a lot of therapists who engage in the content I put out, and a lot of therapists who, as you know, the stuff that I do is about chronic pain and healing chronic pain through emotional and psychological modalities. And a lot of therapists fit the personality profile of people who really need this kind of mind body work, certainly myself included. And one thing about therapists is most of us are trained to be like, um, we should be able to help everyone, and we should be able to be kind of like a little unicorn who can like fit the puzzle piece of like every client exactly what they need. We should be able to fulfill that need, and that's an exhausting, overwhelming, and totally unrealistic expectation for any human being. And I actually think it's really cool and important when therapists do specialize in something, because then it's like you can offer something to your clients in the same way that I do mind body stuff. Like you can offer something to your clients that like they really need, and you're a therapist who can really like hear them and get them more so than another therapist. So you're not in trouble.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely. And when you're in grad school, right? Like and when you go through your internship process, like if you have well, I don't want to say if you have a good internship site, but like I think a good practice for an internship site would be to expose you to a lot of different types of clients. And
Mhm.
I will say for my internship, as interesting as it was, um, I was exposed to like a lot of different types of people. And I found that the ones that I was most effective with were queer people in general.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like where I like to stay in my area, you know.
All right. And
Yeah.
let me say, Dustin, the reason that I know that Dustin exists is because Dustin has a podcast called
Mhm.
Boy Meets Therapy. And the podcast is very fun. I think I think it's a great resource. And I really do think if people like this podcast, Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain, they'd probably also like your podcast. So
Yay!
I'm gonna put that's gonna be in the show notes. Obviously, your info and your podcast will be down there. But do you before we dive into? I mean, what we're here to talk about is minority stress from a queer male perspective, and we
Mhm.
will obviously get to that. But before we do, what's the origin story of your podcast? Like, where did that come from?
So I should say, if anyone's listening to this and they want to hear something from Mr. Hershey, I think there may be something coming up on my podcast with Mr. Hershey in it.
Period.
Just just letting you know. Yeah, so it's interesting. I thought podcasts were really cringy, right? You know, there's the narrative of um, start a podcast or something, but I was really, really personally interested in it. And I thought, if there's a resource that's we can't help everyone. And I don't even like using the word help, we can't treat or work with everyone.
Mhm.
But one thing that we can do is create a resource that is free. And so basically, like the Boy Meets Therapy podcast is a free resource where I take a lot of this information. It takes a lot of work to do it, I'm sure, as you know. But basically, it's something that I wanted to kind of create and have like conversations and dialogues available for people that maybe didn't have access to mental health counseling, or people who did, but they're in like an interesting situation. I don't know, it's basically just like a resource that is free, that is available to people. So I wanted to create that and have that. And also I think I always described myself as not creative, but I think I actually had a therapy session a little bit ago, and my therapist was like, we have to stop this narrative that you're not creative, because you are creative. And so I thought, okay, like the podcast is like really a good avenue for like, expression and creativity. And yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. And I've gotten really into it now. Like I have all these topics that I have this like notes tab on my phone of just like different things that I want to bring up and talk about.
Mhm.
That I've been kind of like working on putting things together on. So anyway,
Mhm.
that's the tea.
Same, literally same.
Yeah.
And I will just say to listeners that Boy Meets Therapy is very like there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of good laugh lines,
Mhm.
and it is very creative. It's funny to think that you have the narrative you're not creative, because I would say it's very creative. So, my recommendation to folks listening, especially for queer people, check it out. Boy Meets Therapy. But okay, let's get into minority
Let's
stress.
dive in.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So, all right, we're talking, of course, like specifically from a queer male
Mhm.
perspective. We want to, make sure that is known. That caveat: we obviously, the two of us, are not speaking for all minorities and not all experiences of minority stress. Um, I think it's important to name at the outset, like all of us have complex and intersectional identities. And most people will have some identities that are privileged and some identities that are marginalized. And I myself, when I hear the term minority stress, I don't think of that as applying to me because I'm white.
Mhm.
But one thing that I really love about your podcast is that you talk a lot about minority stress. And when I reflect on the things that I talk about in my podcast, it's basically just like a litany of all the ways that like minority stress has impacted my mental health and
Mhm.
impacted my physical health and been a major factor in causing my chronic pain over the course of my life. So it just really stands out to me that I wouldn't apply that term to myself naturally when it like obviously totally applies. So I'm like, let's name it. Let's talk about it. Um, you take us there wherever you want to start. Let's talk about minority
Yeah,
stress.
I think you acknowledge something really important, is that when we talk about the broader queer community, right? White gays are probably the most privileged of that community. So like, I think
Totally.
we just kind of have to throw that in there as we're two white gays talking about this, you know? And it's interesting too, I never really identified with minority stress either, because I did grow up, you know, a white guy in the suburbs. And so that was something that I never really identified with until I kind of like started working in my own therapy and started looking at pieces of my identity and who I was. And so I want to throw that out there. But yeah, so I think the big like a big thing here is, what is minority stress, right? Like, so what is that? What does that even mean? So minority stress is the chronic excessive stress that is experienced by stigmatized or marginalized groups. That includes LGBTQ people, queer people, racial ethnic minorities, and others that stem from prejudice, discrimination, or social stigma. We see that a lot with certain religious groups. We see that with groups that are basically marginalized, that are not the broader kind of population. And that's what that is. And that impacts us in different ways. And when we talk specifically about queer people, which is where we're going to go, I always resort to, there's a paper from 2003 from Ilan Meyer, who is a researcher that is...
Yes, give us the research.
Yes.
Love it. The annotated bibliography.
Yes.
You've come prepared.
So
let's go.
I should mention this. I just recently followed him on Instagram, and I want to reach out to him. But I just haven't yet, because I'm like, what if he responds? You know? And I don't think he understands. Like, it's so weird to be such a big fan of like a researcher, you know? It's just like really interesting. It's really fucking nerdy, actually. Yeah, so there's a study that I refer to in almost every single podcast episode that I talk about, because it was such a monumental study, and it was one of the first times that like minority stress from an LGBT perspective was really, really kind of like put and solidified in research. So Ilan Meyer introduced in 2003 the minority stress model, which was basically a framework that explains why sexual minorities experience higher rates of mental health issues than non-sexual minorities. And when we say sexual minority, we say people that are not heterosexual. Like, that's what we're referring to. And Meyer essentially argued in this paper that beyond general life stress, queer people face chronic identity-specific stressors that are tied to stigma and discrimination. That's a new word for you. And discrimination. So basically, he was able to kind of attribute some of these negative mental health outcomes that we see, like increased rates of depression, anxiety, substance use, and suicide risk, to these stressors.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, let me just pipe up
Pause.
to add,
Let me pause.
I wonder if it sounds like he didn't study this, but I wonder if chronic pain is in there as well and was just maybe not studied. But I would my educated guess is that there is a increased risk of chronic pain for queer people as well.
Yeah. So actually, it's interesting that you said that, because this is where I try to write things down, so I like don't make a little research mistake, but I think I did read something. There is a paper from 2023 that essentially looked at this paper and kind of, I don't want to say updated it, but it looked at it through the lens of like, how is it held up over time? Because 2003 was obviously like, what we're 2026, so 23 years ago. So, when we look at research, like we try to look at more recent research. But basically this paper from 2023, I think it was David Frost was the researcher that worked actually with Ilan Meyer, and who was the original developer, blah, blah, blah. We're getting into the lore.
Take us there,
But he actually was looking at like biological things as well with the paper. So there were, and again, I don't want to exactly quote something, but I think that they did look at physical like responses to stress and how that impacted people in the long term as well. I need to double check that. But I do think when we talk about chronic stress, like in the mind-body connection, like I do think that there was something that was mentioned in that paper. Again, if I'm wrong, then crucify me. But But I'm
Let me say, even if, first of all, I'm sure you're right, because I'm just sure you're right. So even if it's not in the paper, stress leads to effects on the body. So I'm sure you're right.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
Go on.
Yeah. So do you think it's important to talk about like the different types of stressors?
Great.
What do you
Yeah.
think? Okay.
Sure. Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to stop me at any point because I will go. And I will go and I will go.
That's over here. We're here to listen to you. So you go.
Oh, then I want to hang out for a lot longer than I'm going to be here. So in this paper, right, which is essentially when we talk about like minority stress, like this is what we're gonna kind of go by. This is the really like the good framework that we're gonna go by. So Meyer in 2003 distinguished between two particular types of stressors. And those are distal stressors and those are proximal stressors. And what does this word mean? Oh my God, distal, proximal, what are you talking about, Dustin? So distal stressors are external events. These are things like actually experiencing prejudice, rejection, or violence, bullying. That is the actual tangible experience of stressors as a result of your identity, right? So when we think about like the kid in school who's getting like bullied and pushed around for being more effeminate, we're talking about a distal stressor. Like that's something that's happening to them. Proximal stressors are internal processes, such as the things that I do in order to prevent other people from being able to identify my sexuality more easily. You know, so if I cross my legs, like maybe I'm more conscious of like not crossing my legs when I'm places, or, you know, if I recognize that there's a little bit of femininity in my voice, like maybe I like try to straighten it out and you know, and deepen my voice a little bit. But yeah, these are kind of, and hypervigilance, that's a big one too, you know, like being hyper aware of what's going on around me and kind of scanning for people around me for safety, which is something that I do like all the time. That's something that I have never been able to let go of. But yeah, those are the kind of like proximal stressors. So that's kind of like the two different types of stressors when we talk about like minority stress, like the minority stress model.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard those, I don't know, terms used in that way. And that's super enlightening. Something, let me just say that we
Please.
talk about on this podcast all the time is, there are three like major domains wherein chronic pain develops. It's like it's always about fear and a sense of danger. So first, it's like fear of the sensations in your body. Second, fear of your emotions, and third, fear of being yourself. And what you're talking about with proximal stressors, that is literally synonymous with the fear of being yourself, like feeling that what's going on inside you is not okay. And often this, for chronic pain patients, and surely for everyone, happens on a below the level of full consciousness plane. So people are doing this without even necessarily knowing they're doing it, which is why a lot of people come to chronic pain work thinking like mentally I'm totally fine, but physically I'm in pain. And when they uncover more, uncover more of the emotions and more of the psychological stuff, then they see like, oh, actually mentally, like I'm not fine. like I have stuff to work on. And so I just want to say that to bring this in for people in my audience to be like, yeah, like what Dustin is talking about is our stuff.
Yeah. So and it's interesting too because like when we think of distal stressors, this is like an external objective thing. Like this is something that if someone, you know, I can look and see if a kid's being bullied for being gay, like that is like a distal stressor right there that I can see. It's objective. And then the proximal stressors are subjective. These are things that vary person to person that probably have a connection when we talk about chronic pain. There's probably a connection there as well. Like these are things that are subjective internal processes that are essentially dependent on the person's own, like, you know, psychology and how things impact them. Yeah, or how they carry, you know, what their expectations of rejection might be, or what their, you know, their level of identity concealment, or internalized negative social attitudes that they have about themselves, which would be like internalized homophobia in the case of like minority stress for queer people. But yeah, those are the two kinds of stressors. And minority stress theory has pretty strong empirical support. Like over the years, it's a constantly referred to study. It's become like kind of a framework, and it actually, here's the bad news, wah, wah, minority stress actually pretty reliably predicts worse mental health outcomes. So, your level of experience to minority stress is going to explain some of the disparities in, again, depression, anxiety, substance use, and suicide risk. And if we even want to be broader, right, this is more than just queer people, right? People that grow up with experiences, when we see like distal and proximal stressors about kind of, when it comes to race or when it comes to, religious affiliation, when it comes to different types of ethnic minorities, like different types of groups that people can be in, we can see this, right? Like we can see some of these things. But back to queer people, just minority stress theory is one of the most validated frameworks in LGBTQ mental health research. So it's one of those that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I love how it's like there's a lot of empirical evidence. I'm like, am I personally one of the data points? Because I think I am.
Maybe. I mean, it's interesting. It's like I had a professor in undergrad. I loved my undergrad professors. Like, no shade to my grad school professors, but like my undergrad professors, I loved them.
Awesome.
And I had one who would say, when we look at research, let's take ourselves out of the broad generalization and ask how it is related to us personally. So, when I say that, I mean, if I read a research paper, right, my first thought might be, well, that's not all people. Like, well, that can't be true because blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no. Hold on. Does this apply to you personally? And honestly, when I read The Velvet Rage, have you read The Velvet Rage?
I know I should have, but I have
It's
not.
okay.
I'm so not a reader. Someday I will listen to the audiobook.
It's okay. Well, the audiobook I think is on Spotify. I think it's included in your Spotify if you have it. But anyway, so it's interesting. That book, when I was first reading that book, and I haven't read it in a long time, but I was, I remember reading it and I was very critical of it at first. I was like, hold on, this can't be a synthesis for all gay people, like blah, 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 blah. Not all gay men are like this, and I had to step back and be like, hold on, we're not talking about all gay men. Like, does this apply to you? And if it does, then take it. If it doesn't, then don't. And that allowed me to stop being, really defensive about some of the writing that was there and to just more like identify when I identified.
That's really helpful. I'm glad you're saying that because for chronic pain sufferers, you don't know this, but you're hitting on something very important for us. So thank you for saying this. Many chronic pain sufferers are very quick to write themselves out of the narrative that their pain is coming from an emotional or psychological place and that they can heal from it.
Mm-hmm.
So common for people to not believe that. And so any little, like for example, Dr. John Sarno, who's the grandfather of the branch of mind body medicine that I practice, has a list of like, these are the common personality traits that people have if they, develop, like people who have these personality traits are very likely to develop chronic pain. And people will say like, oh, I have, 8 of those 10 personality traits, but the 2 don't apply to me. Therefore, this whole framework doesn't apply to me, and it's not going to help me, and I don't count, and my pain and suffering is going to last for forever until I get major surgery. And I just want to tell people, just listen to what Dustin is saying.
That's so sweet. Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing that I talk about. Like, we mentioned when I do my podcast, like, I recognize that I'm speaking sometimes in generalizations about a particular group or topic. And when I say generalizations, I mean like, things that I try to stick to research, like when it comes to bold claims, like, because I think the best way to avoid, like a lot of pushback or saying something that maybe is not correct is to just stick to what the research that we have about it. And then if someone comes for you, you can say, well, I just went off the research.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that, not everything is going to apply to everybody. Like, in therapy, we take like a biopsychosocial approach. And it's like, what a big word. Oh my God. I hate that that's such a big word. But it's like, we look at things like biology, and this is on a personal level. Like, what is your personal biology? Like, what are some genetic things? Like, what are, that. And then we will look at the psychology, like, how are you personally like things? That might be different from how your mom processed things, And then the social aspect is, of course, like where you grew up and like how things specifically impacted you. And so when we're talking about like broad research, like we can only incorporate a few of those things in order to try to get like generalizationable information.
1,000%. Love it.
Yeah.
Love
Ooh.
Tell us more about minority stress.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So, I feel like this is a terribly weird thing to say, but I love talking about minority stress. Well, particularly like from the gay male perspective, right?
Right. Well, and let me just say, I know I'm like, keep talking. I'm like, let me interrupt you. It's validating. I think a thing that's really nice about this and why it's nice to talk about it and have a conversation about it, hopefully nice for the listeners to hear about it, is that it's very validating to see your own personal experiences like, oh, this is a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not alone with this. But yes, talk to us.
Well,
Go on.
it's also like there is, I think our culture pushes this narrative that we have to be unique. We have to be the only one, and we have to be this, whatever. I like almost want to counter that and say like it's okay to not be unique. And honestly, like my lack of uniqueness in many areas of my life has been like really, really comforting for me, because to be unique is like this incredible thing, that this narrative that we've created of like, oh, uniqueness is everything. But we also ultimately as people like want to feel connected to others. And I don't think that you have to deny some uniqueness to like do that, but there's comfort in not being unique in some ways, I think.
1,000%.
I know that for me, it's like when I graduated high school and started hanging out with more gay people, I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. Like or just queer people in general, like I remember when I was like finishing high school, I hung out with like a big group of lesbians. And I remember just kind of being like, oh my God, this is like so interesting at like the connection that I have with them as compared to like, my everyday friends that I had at the time or whatever.
Well, let me just say it's so nice to hear you say that, because literally as you're saying like, you're not as unique as you think you are, and it's nice not to be unique. I'm like looking at your face through the screen and being like, oh, we probably have a lot in common. And there's something really nice about that. I'm glad you're saying that.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good to be like connected to. It's like kind of a quintessential like human need, right? Is to feel connected to. And yeah, and it's like if you want to like things that other people like you should like them, because you like them. And maybe there's a reason that a lot of people like it. Because it's good.
So true.
But
Flash to me paying a ton of money for the Beyonce concert, and it was so worth every
really,
second and
you know what I'm
penny.
saying? It's like anyway, so yeah, it's I yeah. So there's a connection in that. But yeah, I think just like going back to like minority stress, it's like, we see these things. So I don't want to like leave a depressive impression, right? Like, you're saying that being identifying with one of these groups, right? Like, let's say gay men, which is where I'm going to go. Identifying as a gay man, you're saying that research supports that can reliably predict worse mental health outcomes. Oh my God, that's so depressing. Well, what do we do in order to kind of buffer that? Like, what are some of the protective factors, as we call them, that exist that can kind of like mitigate some of these factors? And those are things like social support, community belonging, and community connectedness, particularly within our own community. So, and that's why I want to say this, like I push in my content a lot, like connectiveness between queer people and other queer people, because that community support is actually really important for us. And it's kind of one of those things where we've been given this deck of cards, right? Like I am a gay man. Like that's what I didn't grow up as a straight guy. So there are some of these experiences that I have and some things that I'm going to have to consider. And being connected to like my community is going to be something that's really important for me. It's not something that I'm going to be able to kind of like skip past personally. So yeah, I mean, those are like kind of protective factors that kind of combat some of these negative mental health outcomes that we see. Also, developing a coherent, self-accepting sense of our own sexual and gender identity. That's going to be really important, and that's where things like I think therapy can be really helpful, or even, reading different books or connecting to different podcasts or whatever. It's like connecting with that sense of my sexuality or my gender identification, is going to be something that is going to create a protective factor for me that is probably going to help mitigate some of these worst mental health outcomes that we see in this research. So, yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts?
I'm actually thinking as you're talking, it's making me think about I have and have had over the course of like having my private practice many gay and queer male clients, and it's hard for me to I'm thinking like, what are the ways that minority stress impacts us, and it's hard for me to put a finger on it because I'm like, it just feels like it permeates like almost everything. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on that question of like, how do you see this tangibly impacting either yourself or your clients?
Yeah. So if we talk about myself, there are a lot of ways that these things impacts us. I think that even if we grew up in a completely affirming environment, like if we took away all the negative things, right? If we took away the distal stressors, right, that we're talking about, which are like outward experiences of kind of like discrimination. Like if we take those things out and everybody is loving and affirming of us and blah, 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 we
and let me just add, they're not.
They're not. They're not.
They're not. For those listening, if you want to, this is a fantasy world.
This is a
it's not
fantasy.
real, but go on.
This is a fantasy. Yeah, this is not real. And so, even if we took all those negative things away, there's still an experience that we have, if we have, and I'm going to use the phrase same-sex attraction because, a lot of religious bodies like to use that. And so I also like to use it. I'm like, okay, well then I can use it too.
Yeah, reclaiming same-sex attraction.
Yeah, and so, even if we grew up in a completely supportive environment, and there was no stigmatization towards our identity, like we would still identify with my attraction is different than the people around me. So there would still be this factor of us that's like, while I feel supported and loved, and those are really incredible, like protective factors that would probably mitigate all of these, mental health disparities that we see, but there would still be this kind of identification with like something's different about me, and that's taking away all the negative experiences that a lot of us have, and I think we say in research and therapy like adverse experiences, like that's even taking away all that stuff. And so, there's still something that we would just be like, something's a little different. So there's no way, I make that argument to say, there's really no way that I see a person grows up in experiencing like a different level of queerness, like all of us do. Queerness, I would argue, is a spectrum. Like some of us, deviate stronger from the cisgender heterosexual norm than others. And I would argue that it would permeate like, our attraction is a huge thing about us. It is really integral to like who we are as the kind of person, regardless of what their gender or sexual orientation is, that we're attracted to. So it permeates, I would argue, like a lot of things, like almost everything. I mean, the way I experience a social justice class is probably different, because when we talk about like anti-discrimination laws, like when we talk about like, before the legalization of same-sex marriage, right? Like, I was in high school when that. I don't remember. Are we the same age?
I'm 37.
I'm 32.
I was
Okay. Yep. So we remember in high school, like when gay same-sex marriage was not legal.
Oh,
it was actually not legal.
Yeah,
so it's like we're talking about.
I had just graduated from grad school. I think it was it 2015?
It was 20. I was 21 years old, so it was 2014, 2015. I should know this.
Same, but I remember that it was a slow burn, but it was around that time. Anyway,
I remember going out that night, and like it was like a huge night, and I went to a gay bar and it was awesome. But But yeah, like
I remember not going out because I was stuck in a very stressful mental health clinic. And I remember one lesbian woman who was another staff member, we're like running around all day. Like, I mean, I don't know what your experience was of being a therapist right out of school, but it was very stressful in the beginning. And we're all like running around this clinic. It's so insane, so crazy. And I say crazy in a loving way. I am crazy. I'm not saying crazy to like disparage mentally unwell people. I'm in that boat too. So we're all running around, and it was like, oh my God, gay marriage became legal today. And like a couple hours into that, this lesbian woman, like, we like passed each other in the hallway, and she's like, wow, are you doing anything today? And I was like, about what? And she was like, about gay marriage becoming legal. And I was like, oh, right. I don't think so. Are you? And she was like, no, I don't think so. So that's my memory, but
that
go
reminds me
on.
of that Spider-Man meme, where they're like all pointing at each other. I
I
don't
don't
know.
even
Yeah,
know
you
the
don't know what
meme,
I'm.
but
I'm chronically
yeah.
online. But yeah, like even when we talk about like just structural things, right? Like I'm in high school and I'm in a law course or I'm in a social whatever class, and like that's just part of our society, right? Is like there is a structural like institutionally like homophobic anti whatever, like you know what I'm saying, like
Yep.
there are structural things in place that are homophobic, right? Like that's an example of that. And so it's like, yeah, it impacts us. Like in when I was in PE class, it impacted me in PE class. When I was in English, when we read about certain things, obviously my perspective is going to be like a little bit different. It impacts a lot of who we are. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's such a baseline of existence that I barely even think about it, which is why it's helpful to make it consciously.
Mhm.
Think about it. Like when and you're talking about like classes, I think about like in high school, I was a big theater kid,
Mhm.
and somebody who was like kind of clearly questionably gay, like myself, was not going to be like easily getting like the lead part in like all the fucking straight
Like Prince
shows. You know what
Charming,
I
like
mean?
you're not going to be Prince Charming. Yeah.
Exactly. Like the parts with the biggest solos and the best, the most lines and the most attention. It's just part of our society. Those parts are for straight people. One tiny example of so many.
Yeah, well, and it's also like, we think about when we first start reading in like middle school, right? It's like we read about Romeo and Juliet, and we read about,
Yeah,
even if we grew up religious, like it's Adam and Eve, like
yeah.
which I think it was Adam and Steve actually, but
Say more.
but but yeah, it's those are the first stories that we hear. So that is
Mhm.
kind of the foundation of, when we get into early adolescence and we start feeling like attraction towards other boys, it's like, whoa, like all these things that I've like been taught and are normalized, right? Like because let's say they are normal, like it's not, I'm not going to say that.
Mhm. Right. Most people are
Yeah, most
straight.
people are
Sure.
straight.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that thing, like those are like the narratives that we hear. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's impacts like, yeah, largely how we view and see the world and experience ourselves in it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. You brought up the word adverse,
Mhm.
which makes me like this is something that I think about with the adverse childhood
Yeah.
experiences study being so prominent in our field. Um, the being growing up gay is not one of the I've maybe there's 8, maybe there's 10, I forget exactly what it, but it's like
Mhm.
experiencing physical
The
abuse, sexual
ace,
abuse.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could rattle them off all off the top of my head. But it's for people who might not know this, it's a very foundational study in the field that actually connects. It's not even about mental health. It's adverse childhood experiences, which are all psychologically and emotionally related. But the study says that the impact is on the physical body.
Mm.
So it's like these people who have gone through various ACEs are more likely to have sicknesses, physical ailments, and so people in the field that I'm in, like chronic pain, talk about that kind of stuff a lot. It I feel it is an adverse adult experience to not have growing up gay on the ACEs list because it feels so invalidating. So I'm like, I feel like that was a major ACE in
Yeah.
my life, but it's not even listed. no shade to the other aces. They're all serious,
Right.
but it just feels to me like such an oversight. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. I think I think it's like I'm thinking about, what I'm interpreting from your question is growing up gay an adverse childhood experience?
Yeah.
I
I mean, my answer is yes.
Well, your
but
answer is yes.
what do you think?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting. I think I genuinely, let me offer this perspective. So like
Please.
I genuinely am really, really grateful to be gay. Like I am
Honestly,
really grateful.
same.
There are so many situations in my everyday life in which something happens or whatever, and I'm like, oh, thank God I'm gay. It's just like, we largely do not exist inside of the box that most straight people do. And I'm not like, knocking straight people, because I very much would say, like if you, I just crossed my legs. You didn't even see that. I literally just crossed my legs. We're getting into it. Like I very much like understand and empathize with straight people that feel like, okay, this is, for straight women, for example, right? It's like when a straight woman doesn't have kids by 30, people start asking questions, and
1,000%.
it's like,
Yeah.
because they're not following the exact narrative of like what people would think that they need to do, and it's kind of like, I can only imagine. So my best friend, she doesn't have any kids. She's 40, and we are both like, very grateful to not have children, both of us, I should say. No offense to parents, but uh, but yeah, and it's just kind of like, just hearing from her perspective about some of the pushback she's gotten about, like, what do you mean? People that just cannot conceptualize what it means for someone to not want children, right? Like,
Yeah.
straight people or gay people kind of already exist outside of this box.
Totally. We get to do kind of whatever the fuck
So
we want.
yeah, whatever narrative that like we create or whatever we do is really like largely up to us.
Yeah.
And depending on which avenue, wherever we want to go down, and it's also like, I notice that some of families aren't affirming or whatever, but like, I am the middle child in my family. I have 3 siblings. I have an older sister, and I have a younger sister and a younger brother. All of them have kids. All of them are married. All of them, have their homes that they live in Georgia. And I'm the one who, I'm not married. I am single for now. We'll see what happens in the future. But, I'm single. I up and moved to New York. And like, I do these like crazy things, like and so it's like, I've never really gotten any pushback about that. Whereas, let's say, if I were a straight man, for example, right? I feel like people would be asking questions, like, even not just family, but like, when are you going to settle down? When are you going to find the right one? And it's like, or like, you're moving around a lot. Like, when are you going to set, it's just like, I don't feel that in the same sense that like straight people do, of these expectations. And I'm like really grateful for that.
Freedom. Totally. Gay people.
Yeah.
Freedom. 1,000%. 1,000%.
And it's also like, I exist in a community amongst a group of people who also don't follow those rules. So it's like,
Right.
no one, like, I'm 32. No one is asking me like when I'm going to have kids or when I'm going to settle down,
Yeah.
And so it's like, while there are a lot of things, the adverse things that come with being gay, right? Like a lot of them, that is kind of a benefit, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but I think there's a lot of really great things about being gay. And I'm really, really like grateful to be gay, despite, a lot of the other like adverse experiences that are there.
Beautiful. Beautifully put.
So,
Same. Literally resonating with everything you're saying. Same. Well, okay. I know you have to go in a minute because Dustin has to go see a client.
I do.
But we both of us truly are therapists. It is real. I once saw a whole one-woman show about a woman who, she did this whole show about being a social worker, and it was fucking hilarious. There's just like all this like, hilarious content about like, as a social worker, as a caseworker, this and that, all this shit happening to her and whatever. And she said, people literally come up to me at the end of this show and ask, are you really a social worker? So yes, we are actually, it is real. Both Dustin and I are really therapists. Let me ask you, if people are resonating with you and your message and they want to learn more about you, or maybe they even would like to work with you as a therapist, how can people find you?
Sure. So I am Boy Meets Therapy on everything. Also, my website is boymeetstherapy.com. There are some like resources on there. There's like a work with me page. There's like links to the podcast, all that stuff. There's some blog posts. I haven't really been doing the blog posts recently just because it's too much work. I'm being honest with you. Like it stopped being fun. And I was like, I don't want to write a paper. So yeah, on there. And then Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, it's just at Boy Meets Therapy. That's me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Yes. Yeah. So for people who want more, reach out to Dustin. And truly, I'm telling you, the podcast is fun. If you get into it, you're gonna like it.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom?
No, thank you
wanna
so
leave
much
us
for
with?
like having me on. I'm so happy to be here. I don't even think I asked you how you were at the beginning when we first logged on. So how are you?
I'm good.
Okay. Good.
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Good. Glad we got to that. And for everybody listening, this has been the Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain podcast, and I will talk to you next week.
Yay.
If you're looking for a therapist, you found one, and you can decide. Does my vibe resonate with you? Therapy is an opportunity. Therapy is an opportunity to tune into you, to learn to feel more comfortable being yourself, to feel more comfortable with your emotions, and to feel more comfortable existing in the world in your body. Do you have difficulties in your life? Maybe it's chronic pain, maybe it's something else. Maybe you want to become a person who likes yourself. Do you want a therapist to help you? And would you like me to get to know you and to help you? That is actually an option. You can find me at SeanHershey.com or MindBodyMedicineForChronicPain.com. Both go to the same place, and if you're looking for me, I'd welcome a message from you. SeanHershey.com, MindBodyMedicineForChronicPain.com, and you can request a free consultation.